Some of the biggest legends in Hollywood carried secrets so heavy, the studios spent decades trying to bury them, until now. Before the red carpets, before the flashing bulbs, before their names were whispered like royalty, some of Hollywood's most iconic stars lived lives the studios prayed the world would never discover. And once you start looking at the real stories, not the polished press releases, not the studio-approved myths, the entire golden age starts to feel a lot less glamorous and a lot more dangerous. Take Clara Bow, that girl. The face of carefree flapper fantasy. But behind the posters and the lipstick smiles was a girl who grew up in a Brooklyn apartment so thin you could hear strangers breathing through the walls. A childhood stitched together by poverty, fear, and survival. The kind of past that doesn't vanish just because a studio slaps your face on a billboard. And that's the pattern you'll see again and again in the lives of these stars. The deeper you dig, the more it stops feeling like coincidence and starts feeling like the industry quietly knew exactly where these young women came from and exactly how to use it. Because this isn't just a trip down Hollywood memory lane. It's a look at the lives that were rewritten, the truths that were rearranged, and the shadows that built the legends. And Clara Bow, she's only the beginning. Clara didn't walk into Hollywood. She escaped into it. By her teens, she was running errands for pennies, sleeping wherever a friend had a spare corner, and eating whatever was left on someone else's plate. And then, by some twist of fate that felt almost too cinematic, she entered a magazine contest. No money for real photos, no stylist, no plan. Just a borrowed backdrop, a friend with shaky hands, and a dream nobody believed in but her. And somehow it worked. Executives didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't polished. She wasn't trained. She wasn't studio pretty. But every time the camera found her face, something electric happened. Something they couldn't bottle, couldn't control, but desperately wanted to own. She arrived in California with nothing but a train ticket and raw talent. And in a few years, she was Paramount's crown jewel, the flapper fantasy, the woman every magazine wanted and every producer tried to shape. But none of them wanted the truth, that their brightest star had once fought for scraps, slept in hallways, and clawed her way out of the life they pretended didn't exist. Hollywood built Clara Bow into a myth. But the real girl? She was tougher than anything they put on screen. Before Mae West became the queen of one-liners, she was learning the rules of survival in smoky burlesque halls where applause came with cigarette haze and men who didn't always take no for an answer. She wasn't shocked by that world. She studied it. She figured out what attention meant, how desire worked, and how to flip the power dynamic before anyone realized she'd done it. Those cramped stages weren't glamorous, but they sharpened her. Every wink, every pause, every razor-sharp joke was born from nights when performance and survival were practically the same thing. By the time she hit Broadway, she wasn't just an actress. She was a strategist who knew exactly how to control a room. And when she wrote a play called Sex, choosing a title that guaranteed moral outrage, she wasn't being reckless. She was being deliberate. Police raids, headlines, arrest records, all of it only made her bigger. Hollywood wanted her danger, not her innocence, and she walked in with both. Mae West didn't rise because the system lifted her. She rose because she understood the system better than the men who tried to run it. Barbara Payton walked into Hollywood with a kind of confidence that made every room pause for a beat. She had the presence, the looks, the spark, everything the studios claimed they wanted. And for a moment, it actually seemed like she might outrun the city's darker side. Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye put her on the map. Critics praised her screen presence, and the tabloids called her Hollywood's wildfire. But wildfire spreads fast, and burns out even faster. Her downfall wasn't a slow fade. It was a spectacle. A love triangle that turned violent, a respected actor hospitalized, headlines that read like Pulp Fiction, and suddenly Barbara wasn't a rising star anymore. She was a scandal with legs. Studios backed away overnight. The doors that once swung open for her slammed so hard they almost echoed. Roles dried up. Money vanished. And by the mid-1950s, Barbara was surviving the only way she could through choices she never tried to sugarcoat. In her autobiography, She wrote the line that still haunts Hollywood today. "I needed money. I had to eat. No excuses. No spin." Just the raw reality of a woman the industry used, discarded, and then pretended never existed. Barbara Payton didn't fall from grace. Grace was never offered to her in the first place. Long before the Oscars, long before the scene-stealing performances, Shelley Winters was a teenager in New York trying to keep the lights on one dance ticket at a time. Taxi dance halls weren't glamorous. They were crowded, smoky rooms where men paid for few minutes of attention, and the women who worked there learned more about human nature than any acting coach could ever teach. Shelley watched everything. How people lied, how they flirted, how they sold versions of themselves to feel seen. Every late-night conversation, every boundary she had to set, every dance with someone looking for more than a ticket, all of it became part of the instinct that later made her performances feel brutally real. When she played desperate, hopeful, broken, or bold, it wasn't technique. It was memory. She wasn't the studio's idea of a classic beauty, but she didn't need to be. Directors noticed the grit behind her eyes, the edge in her timing, the way she could shift a scene just by breathing differently. Shelley Winters didn't come from privilege or polish. She came from survival, and that's exactly why she became unforgettable. Some stories sit quietly in the corners of Hollywood's history, and then there are the ones that refuse to stay hidden. Xavier Hollander was one of those. She didn't tiptoe into New York's underground. She walked in like she was taking over a boardroom. In a city built on secrets, she turned taboo into strategy and became the kind of woman the press pretended to condemn, while secretly hanging on every word she said. Then there was Linda Lovelace, a name the world thought it understood. Fame painted her as a symbol of liberation, but behind the camera was a much darker truth: control, coercion, and a life she never fully chose. Her voice, once dismissed, eventually became one of the loudest warnings about an industry that celebrates its stars while ignoring their pain. Madonna's journey was different, but cut from the same thread of survival. She arrived in New York with $35, sleeping on floors, doing whatever it took to stay alive. She never apologized for those choices. She weaponized them, turned them into armor. And when the world tried to shame her, she built an empire instead. Tracy Lord's story hit even harder. A minor pulled into an industry that should have protected her, not profited from her. By the time the truth surfaced, the shockwaves tore through Hollywood, exposing a system that looked the other way for far too long. Her comeback wasn't just a return, it was a reclamation. And finally, Cardi B, a reminder that survival stories didn't end with the golden age. Dancing in strip clubs at 19, escaping an abusive relationship, and turning raw honesty into global superstardom. People tried to shame her past the same way they tried to shame the women before her, but she refused to play along. Different eras, different struggles, same pattern. Women who came from the margins, carved their own paths, and forced the world to face the truths it tried hardest to bury. Hollywood loves legends, but the real legends? They were forged long before the cameras ever started rolling.